But today, the largest countries of the world have agreed a global plan for recovery and reform. This involves the biggest interest rate cuts in history, the biggest fiscal stimulus we have ever seen, the biggest increase in resources in the history of our international institutions, with 250 billion, more money than ever before, for trade finance as well.
Did you hear about the bailouts?
No, what about the bailouts?
The governments have announced the taxpayers will make money on the bailouts.
Should I believe them?
Depends. Do you believe the politicians are honest?
No.
Do you believe the bankers are fair?
No.
Do you believe that the 2 + 2 = pink?
No. I definitely do not believe that the 2 + 2 = pink.
Then you should not believe we'll make money on the bailouts.
But how could the governments claim such a thing?
By conveniently ignoring the backdoor bailouts.
What is a backdoor bailout?
A backdoor bailout is like any other bailout, except the governments lie and say it wasn't a bailout.
But what was the main bailout?
The main bailout was the TARP program.
What is the TARP program?
A program where the governments used the taxpayer dollars to buy the shares in the banks.
Why did they buy the shares?
Because they said the banks were too big to fail, and if they failed, there would be too many foreclosures and no new mortgages.
So after the governments bought the shares, did the banks stop the foreclosures?
No.
Did they give the mortgages?
No.
How will the world react if the next entity to declare bankruptcy is a nation? Who is next in line if that were to happen? Some houses of cards have already started falling. This is Iceland, until recently one of the richest nations in the world. When the crisis hit, the Icelandic banks collapsed. The Icelandic stock market crashed, leaving the debt with a small population. For the first time in 50 years, this peaceful country saw riots. This is Greece. Here, deficits have hit a record high. The national debt is approaching 135% of GDP. The market wants higher interest rates for Greek loans, increasing the pressure on its strained economy. It seems like the Greek government needs a bailout to avoid collapse. Italy, Spain, Portugal, and Great Britain are other EU nations with similar problems.
The world champion of the global real estate bubble was surely Dubai in the United Arab Emirates. Money was no object, as every local sheikh and every booming company competed to see who could erect the most ostentatious building. While Sheikh Mohammed apparently believed that the party could go on forever, some began to wonder when the global real estate bubble would burst and what would set it off. The interconnectedness of the world economy became starkly apparent in late 2008 in China. Shaoxing is China's textile capital and was among the first places to be hit by the full impact of the global financial crisis. And so late one night in October, Tao sold his Mercedes, burned the financial records of his companies, and disappeared into the night. Cal wasn't the only one. Dozens of Chinese factory owners did exactly the same thing. There was a wave of bankruptcies in the Chinese industrial sector in late 2008, and millions of Chinese workers were suddenly thrown onto the street. Many textile and toy factory workers were owed months of wages.
We just want to be paid what we deserve, and we are not asking for anything that we do not deserve.
Soudain, l'ensemble des établissements bancaires ont compris que personne n'était à l'abri et que toute banque pouvait tomber. À ce moment-là, l'ensemble des banques ont considéré que toutes leurs contreparties étaient en risque, peut-être, et elles ont bloqué tous les circuits de financement. Donc le crédit a cessé de fonctionner à ce moment-là.
Almost 90% of total global trade between continents is shipped by sea. But fewer and fewer large ships are in service.
4 months ago, a ship like this earned $70,000 to $80,000 a day, and now it's earning perhaps $7,000 or $8,000.
And you can also see that beginning in September, when the Lehman Brothers crisis began, there was a significant drop in business, affecting ships of all sizes.
Many shipping companies with low cash reserves now face bankruptcy.
Meet Uncle Sam. He has a lot of bills to pay. Sam takes out a loan. He calls it a bond. Bonds can be held by banks, investors, or even foreign governments. Uncle Sam has to promise to pay interest on these bonds, just as you do on any loan you take out. Ever think about paying your mortgage with your credit card? That's exactly what Uncle Sam does. He takes out new loans, new bonds, so that he can make payments on the old ones. All those loans, and especially all that interest, adds up. Sam chooses the easy way to make money. Just make it. He calls up the Federal Reserve, which is our central bank, and, like magic, dollars are created and deposited in banks all around America. The problem is that the more of something there is, the less it's worth. Same goes for the US dollar. The more dollars there are, the less each one will buy. That's why commodities like gasoline, food, and gold become more expensive when Uncle Sam does his money-making magic. The commodities aren't really worth more. Your money is just worth less. That's called inflation. Borrowing money, but since he can't even pay the interest on the loans he already has, it just makes his inevitable bankruptcy even worse. Whether it's in 2 months or 2 years, the day will come when Uncle Sam can no longer pay his bills. When that happens, the banks, investors, and foreign governments who are counting on that money won't be able to pay their bills. You see, just like Uncle Sam, governments, banks, and corporations don't actually have much money. Mostly, all they have is debt to each other. That's called a global economic collapse. It's never happened before, so nobody really knows how bad it will be, how long it will last, or even how we'll eventually get out of it. The house of cards has already been built. There's no painless way to dismantle it now. Prepare for what may be very extraordinary circumstances.